Hello everyone and Happy New Year! For me, a new year always feels like a fresh start, an exciting time filled with the promise of new opportunities, and so it seems quite fitting that I'm starting 2025 off introducing you to a new addition to the Aqua Cast family from Elichem Resins, Aqua Cast TURBO. It sounds speedy. If you want to see how speedy it really is, stay tuned and enjoy the video. You're going to be seeing me make two different things today. One of them is to test the curing time, and one of them will be to test the working time. Whilst you're watching me measuring and mixing the Aqua Cast TURBO, let me explain a few things about it. In most ways, Aqua Cast TURBO water-based eco resin is just the same as the original Aqua Cast. You can use it for all the same projects with all the usual techniques. The difference is that it cures in less than half the time, which is great news for all the impatient crafters out there. It is actually the fastest curing eco resin on the market. The mixing ratio for Aqua Cast TURBO is 100 parts powder to 40 parts water, so there is a slight difference there. And when Aqua Cast TURBO is launched to the public at the end of January 2025, the Aqua Cast calculator on the Elichem website will also be updated, so finding the exact measurements will be easy. But because I had a pre-launch sample, I couldn't use the calculator. And although I got the mixing ratio spot on, I wasn't sure if I'd actually made enough to fill my mould. But luckily it was my lucky day and it was spot on. So because I had all of that to tell you, I got to show you the mixing in real time. I'm sorry if you got a bit bored, but I thought it would be good for you to see exactly how long it takes to mix up the powder and the water to that smooth consistency. And it actually took around 1 minute and 10 seconds and it was perfect. Next, it was time to add the pigment, and I'm going for a soft avocado green colour. This pigment is designed for eco resins, and I'll leave a link in the video description for it. Now, I don't know if you can tell just by looking, but it's actually a little bit more fluid than the usual Aqua Cast which I use, the original Aqua Cast. It seems creamier and, I don't know, it just moves nicer. That's when you first mix it anyway. It does thicken up after a while, but we'll get into that on the second project. But yeah, if you're pouring it as soon as you've mixed it, it pours very smoothly, and I like it a lot, I really do. So the mould I'm going to be using today is to make a saucer, and I think it was from Amazon. It's not a bad mould, it's only a cheapie, but it works well, so that's what I'll be using today, and let's see how it turns out. I like to add just a little bit at a time and move it around, give it a good squeeze, make sure there's no bubbles trapped around the rim of the mould, and then add a little bit more and just keep doing it, you know, quite slowly, and it's just you just have a little bit more control over it. If you put too much in at once, you're going to make a mess. It's going to go everywhere in a mould like this. Yeah, you've got to let it run down the sides and really give it its own time to find its way. But as you've been watching, hopefully you will have been able to see the fluidity of it. It's beautiful to work with. So I'm going to fast forward to the end now, to where I'm going to leave it to cure to see just how long it does take. I decided it would be a sensible idea to put the mould onto my levelling table. So you can see I've got it on my levelling table there to make sure it's just right. And we've gone on to a time lapse now. And yeah, we're nearly at 20 minutes. There we go. The guidelines are 15 to 20 minutes as a curing time. Sometimes it's even quicker, which you'll see in the next project. But yeah, I waited the full 20 minutes minutes, which is still less than half the time of the curing time for the original Aqua Cast, and that's amazing. There's no wetness on the top like you do get with the other eco resins. It's completely dry. And the reason I gave it the full 20 minutes is because it's quite a fragile, thin piece that I've made, and it takes some, pulling about to get that mould off, and I just didn't want to risk it. But it felt ready after 15 minutes. You might be able to see that it's a little bit mottled, isn't it? But that's okay. Once it had dried out, it was fine. It just sometimes looks like that until it's dried out. Now, I'm not going to spend too long on the decoration side of this because this video is all about the Aqua Cast TURBO. And so I'll quickly tell you what I'm doing here. I've printed a picture out onto some thin cardboard, or you might call it thick heavyweight paper. I don't know what it would be classed as, but it's very stiff because I wanted to have like a cream colour to print onto, and I didn't have any cream paper. You could just use printer's paper, that's fine, but yeah, I wanted the cream colour, and all I had in cream was this card, and it's a hair picture that I found on Creative Fabrica. I just thought it would be really good to demonstrate in my thumbnail the speed aspect of it, because hairs are fast, aren't they? And I was thinking of my thumbnail. I could have used a cheetah, but I'm not so keen on those. So yeah, I used a hair. And I'm just using some Hydroflow sealer to seal my dish before adding the picture. You should always leave your finished piece at least a day to really dry out before sealing it. I didn't have that luxury. I had to get on with my video, so I'm not sealing the base of my saucer. I want to leave it raw, you would say, I suppose, so that the moisture can come out through the base, and until it's fully dried out, it can just be sat on something absorbent like kitchen roll or something to take out any moisture. So next it was time to add the picture, and I wanted the picture to be completely saturated so that it could stretch a little bit. You know how paper expands once you put glue on it and it can go wrinkly? Well, if you wet it first and give it about 5 or 10 minutes for that moisture to soak in before you stick it to the surface it's going onto, it shouldn't wrinkle. And that was my plan. So what I've done is I've mixed up 50% water and 50% PVA glue, and I'm just brushing it on, and then I just left it for a while to really let that soak in. After about 10 minutes, I took some undiluted PVA glue, glued the surface that the picture's going to be going on just with a brush, brushing it around to make sure it's all completely covered, and then I added some to the back of the picture and put it into place and smoothed it out on the top. I decided that it really needed to be protected, and so the next day when the glue was completely dry, I added some epoxy resin for that final bit of protection. So like I said before, I'm not really spending too long on the decoration side of things. I just wanted to tell you more about the Aqua Cast TURBO, but I knew you would want to know how I'd got the finished result. So yeah, it's epoxy resin, and I actually did make another one which I haven't shown you the making of, which is fine, you don't need to see me make two, but with the other one I completely covered the surface of the saucer with epoxy resin, and that looked good too. So I've done one of each. I've got one with just the middle covered and one with it completely covered, and I love the result of both. When I finished the first project, I realised I hadn't really focused much on the working time, and I knew you would want to know about it because I did too. It was one of my first thoughts. I thought, if it's so fast at curing, does that really shorten the working time a lot? So I wanted to find out, and that's why the second project idea came about. As you know, I only received a sample, but I had enough left to make a coaster, and so that's what I'm doing here. I'm mixing up the last of my powder and my water to make a coaster. As soon as I'd finished mixing, I set my stopwatch on my iPad so we could look together and see what the working time really was like. Right, for my coaster I decided to do a two-coloured marble effect, and I chose two colours that would go with my dishes just because, really. I just wanted it to fit in with the theme of the video, so I went for green and apricot. And the reason that you're not seeing anything happening is because I was rooting through my colours to find the right colours. I should have been a little bit more organised, seeing as I was on a timer, shouldn't I? But yeah, I wasn't in a massive rush. I didn't think it would, set up too quickly, and I wasn't panicking. I added a drop or two of pigment on each side of the jug, and with hindsight I wish I'd added less. It was really overkill. But it doesn't matter. The results really don't matter so much in this video. It's all about the Aqua Cast TURBO, but it turned out okay. So I'm just mixing it around a little bit to get that marbled effect, and the same with the apricot there on the other side, just giving it a little bit of a swirl around to mix it in. And you can probably see now as I'm pouring it that I should have mixed it more, but never mind it. We're 3 minutes in and it's pouring nicely, isn't it? It's still nice and fluid. Yeah, this mould is from Moulds and Shapes. I really like it, and I haven't used it for ages, so I thought it would be a good choice. And yeah, that's that filled, and luckily I've got some left so I can carry on with my timing and see how it goes. I had a little mould for pendants, and luckily I had it handy, so I started filling my pendant mould. So we're up to about 4.5 minutes now, and I know you can't see too much at the moment. You will see in a second, but it was starting to get thicker. You can see there as it settles, it's not anywhere near as fluid as it was, so it is starting to thicken up at the 4 minutes 40 stage, but not to the point where it becomes a problem. It's still fine, it's still workable. And I waited a while because I really wanted to give you a good demonstration on the working time. So now we're at 5.5 minutes and it's getting much thicker again, but still workable. Once you start moving the mould, you can see it settles out nicely at this stage. So yeah, we're all right so far. 5 minutes 43. Let's see, it's really seems to be like accelerating now, the thickening up time. Let's see how far we can get before I just can't work with it anymore. Let's have another little jump ahead, and now we're on to 6 minutes 22, and that's looking quite thick still, isn't it? Yeah, not bad. I've not got much left in the pot to carry on demonstrating, but let's see. I think I did maybe 1 or 2 more. You see, I'm really scooping it out now rather than pouring it, but it's still good, still absolutely fine. And at this point I was running out of pigment in there, but it didn't really matter for the experiment, did it, if the finished pieces didn't look great. I just wanted to see how far I could go. Wow, so we're on to the 7-minute mark. Still very thick look, which could be useful, for some projects. Get it really thick like that and still work with it. If you're making patterns onto a mould with different colours, it might be quite useful to work with it at that thickness rather than having it too fluid. Yeah, I think it could be useful. It's not necessarily a bad thing that it thickens up. So we're on to 7.5 minutes. That's really good. We've got 1 more to do, I think. Let's see how it goes. Right, approaching 8 minutes, we're on the last one and it's very thick at that stage, which would probably be absolutely fine if you were making coasters or something, but this is a very intricate mould, so I did decide to stop there. Because I'd made a little bit of a mess, I swiped it a little bit with the stirring spatula just to smooth it out, and then all I needed to do was time it again to see how long this all took to cure. I set my timer again and waited. This time I waited around 14 minutes and they felt like they were cured, so I started to demould. And really it's the same as the first time. The first time I waited 20 minutes, but I poured the mixture as soon as I'd mixed it on the first one. With this one I used up 8 minutes of working time, so yeah, I think it makes sense that it's ready a bit quicker because it was already starting to thicken up before I started my timer. And once again, the finished pieces are completely dry. There's no dampness on the surface. They're very, very smooth. I don't know whether should go as far as to say that it's smoother than Aqua Cast, but I tell you what, I couldn't find, apart from I think there was one of the pendants that had a slight imperfection in it, but other than that I couldn't find any bubbles. And I didn't even tap the mould very much, did I, like I usually do? So the finished results with the Aqua Cast Turbo are very, very smooth, and that makes me quite excited, I've got to say. Okay, so my pendants are all demoulded. They're quite pretty. I think they could be stamped or decorated with something and look really nice. They're a bit plain at the moment, but not bad at all. Let's have a look at the coaster. Okay, so here it is. It's very vivid, can we say? I think it's one of those love it or hate it ones, but never mind, it's okay. I'm going to add some gold leaf to make it look even better. So yeah, hopefully it will be all right when I've done that. Okay, I'm going to speed through this turbo style. Sorry, couldn't help myself. I'm using some size there for gold leaf, and what you do with size is you paint it on and allow it to get tacky. So you leave it for about 10 minutes and then it's dried but still tacky, and then you add your gold leaf. Here I'm applying the gold leaf over the detail area and pressing it down with a soft brush. About 30 minutes later, I brushed off all the excess. And then finally, I sealed it with Hydroflow Sealer again, also from Elichem Resins. If you're making coasters with eco resin, I would recommend giving it about 3 coats of sealer. I have found in the past when I've just given it 1 coat that if you get like a ring from your coffee on the coaster, it can stain it. So definitely be, careful with that. Do several layers of sealer to really protect it. But yeah, after 1 layer, it's looking good. So overall, I'm extremely impressed with Aqua Cast Turbo and I'm quite excited to try new things with it. I wish it had been invented when I had to make 20 candle vessels for our cafe when we had it. I had to make 20 to put on the tables and I only had 1 mould. So it was a lot of waiting around each time to wait an hour or more for the Aqua Cast to cure. With this, I could probably make 3 in an hour, and I think that's awesome. As I said at the beginning of the video, Aqua Cast Turbo will be available to you at the end of January 2025. If you can't wait until then, I do believe Eli-Chem has a small amount available on request if you contact them at the email address on screen or in the video description. And that's it for today's video. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe if you would like to. That would be awesome. And I will see you again next time. Thank you for watching and bye for now.